Let's look at some geometric sequences and figure out how to get to the 8th term. Because right here, I just have it going through 5 terms. How do we just get right here to the 8th term instead of having to multiply over and over and over and over again? Let's break it down, make sure you understand what a geometric sequence is and how we tackle them. So we got 4, then we go to 12, then from 12 we go to 36. Most of you probably look at these numbers and you've already figured out the pattern to go from one term to the next. And that's great, but when we get asked to find 8th term, or heaven forbid, I could say the 28th term, we should be able to get that value using a little bit of algebra. So what we're going to do here is this. We're going to say from 4 to 12, how did I get there? 4 to 12, specifically through multiplication. We have what's called a common ratio that we have to figure out. 4 to 12 is times 3. 12 to 36 is also times 3. So what I'm going to list over here is my common ratio is 3. Now we're going to want to write that down and keep track of it because we're going to be using that. We're going to create something over here that's happening. So this pattern is, looks like we're taking a starting value. So we're going to say starting value. That's going to be the first number. And that's a 4. We started with a 4. And then we multiply that by the common ratio. In this case, it's a 3. So we're multiplying that by 3. Now, what you can think of this as is just repeated multiplication, right? Start with 4, great. Multiply by 3 to get this. Multiply by 3 to get that. Multiply by 3 to get this. Multiply by 3 to get that. And you can just keep on going, right? So 4, starting value, multiplied by 3. That would give me 12. Multiply by another 3. That would give me 36. Multiply by another 3. That would give me what goes here. And multiply by one more 3. And that would give me what goes here. And that would be the 5th term. But if you look here, how many 3's do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro. Jeden, dva, trzy, cztery. 4. 4 3's, but we're on the 5th term. Let's erase one, which will bring us back to the 4th term. Now there's only 3 of them, but we're on the 4th term. Let's erase one. But now we're going to be on the 3rd term, but there's only 2. So it almost appears like there's always one less of these 3's than the term we're on. So what we can do instead of repeated multiplication, again, if we want to get to the 5th term, we'd have to multiply 3 how many times? 4 times. Why 4? Because 4 is 1 less than 5. There's always going to be 1 less 3 repeated multiplication compared to the term you're on. And the reason for that is because our first term was 4. That's our starting value. So what we want to do is we want to write this out, but instead of repeated multiplication, because we got to do 8, that's a lot of numbers to write down. I don't want to deal with it. I'm lazy. I'm a mathematician. I want to figure out a quick way to go about this. I'm going to use exponents. 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 is really just 3 to the 4th power. And if I say to the 4th power, 4, remember, is exactly 1 less than 5. So if you're looking for the 8th term, what we're going to do is we're going to write this out using starting value, 4, multiplied by the common ratio of 3, but we can't say the nth term. If n is representing what term we're on, we can say n, but remember, if we want the 5th term, we do 4 of them. So 5th term, 5, because n's representing what term we're on. How would I turn a 5 into a 4? Let's just take 1 away. So all we now need to do, if we're asked to find the 8th term, 28th term, 50th term, we just take that term that we're trying to figure out, plug it in for n, and just remove 1 from it. So 8th term, let's do that. 8 minus 1, and we'll multiply that by 4. So that's 4 times 3 to the 7th power. Grab a calculator, type it in, and see what you get. 3 to the 7th power times 4. So 3 to the 7th is 2,187, multiply it by 4, you're left with 8,748. All right, let me give you another one real quick and let's break it down. Make sure you understand this before you go off and try it all on your own. So let me erase this, get you a new problem, and we'll get going in just a second. All right, be careful. I changed the term I'm looking for now. I also gave you some different numbers here. This is going to be a big one. It's growing fast. So we go from 7 to 35, 35 to 175, and we got to figure out the 10th term. Now, it's probably pretty easy for you to figure out your common ratio. What are we multiplying to get from 7 to 35, 35 to 175? Remember, if it has a common ratio, it's a geometric sequence. So 7 to 35, how much is that? Times 5. 35 to 175, how much is that? Times 5. So our common ratio is a big old 5 right there. Our starting value makes sense, easy to figure out because it's the starting number, 7. So we need to take 7 times 5, but we need an exponent up here because we're doing that repeated multiplication, but we don't want to say 10. Why don't we want to say 10? Because remember, this is like 7 times 5 times 5. But remember, only 2 5s would only get me to would get me to the third term. So if the third term is 2 5s, we always want to take one away. So if we're looking for the 10th term, we would say the 10th term n minus 1. So all we need to do here now is say 7 times 5 to the 10 minus 1, which is 7 times 5 to the 9th, which I'm going to go to a calculator for because I'm not doing that mentally. So 5 to the 9th power, 5 to the power of 9, big old number. Doesn't matter. Keep it on that calculator, multiply it by 7 times 7, and I get, what is that, 13 million? Holy moly, 13,671,875. Now you could go about it the long way and multiply by 5, multiply by 5, multiply by 5, multiply by 5, and keep track of how many times you've done it. Make sure you do it exactly 10 times. But I would much prefer just taking that 10, putting it in for n, remove 1 from it, make sure it's the exponent to your common ratio, and then you can multiply it by your starting value at the end and get your final result like that. All it takes is a tool and knowledge of how to go about doing it. Hopefully this makes sense. Study hard and good luck on your upcoming test.